I was hired on a cursed farm. 7 sinister rules uncovered that will haunt you forever. Standing before the crumbling farmhouse, Alice's heart thundered like a jackhammer in her chest. The locals whispered behind her back, their eyes wide with a mix of pity and fear. They spoke of this place in hushed tones, warning tales that twisted her stomach like a barbed wire. Stay away from the cornfields after dark, they said. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and she wouldn't let her children down. As she stepped inside, Mr. Grayson, the enigmatic owner, greeted her with a welcoming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The farm was a ghost of its former glory, overgrown with weeds and surrounded by a cornfield that loomed like an angry giant. There are rules, he said, laying down his edicts with a casual confidence. 1. Never wander into the cornfields after sunset. 2. Don't talk to the scarecrow. He's not what he seems. 3. Never go in the barn. His voice carried an eerie calmness that sent shivers down her spine. At the moment, all she could think about was her job and her kids, pushing aside the feeling that something was not right. Days blurred into each other, with shadows creeping into her mind. Whispers of her name danced through the night, chilling her bones. Each day, she turned further into Mr. Grayson's world, drowning in ghostly tales and a job that left her increasingly isolated. The townsfolk began to avoid her, faces turning away with concern stitched into their features. She could feel their eyes tracking her every move, as if she wore a scent of desperation that lingered like a heavy fog. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That stormy night, the wind sucked the warmth from the air. Thunder rattled windows, and her heart raced as she heard scrapes outside, the sound of something dragging across the dry earth. The night swallowed her nerves, igniting an urge to uncover the truths hidden in those towering cornstalks. So much for the rules. Trembling, she stole toward the field, a daring beauty under the silvery gaze of the moon. With each step, the corn seemed to sway around her, whispering secrets slipping through the cracks of reality. The air turned thick with dread, each pulse of wind sending a shiver down her spine. Shadows danced tauntingly on the edges of her vision, the world spinning dangerously out of control as she ventured deeper. A voice rippled through the stillness, the familiar timbre of Mr. Grayson flickering in and out like a falling star. You shouldn't have broken the rules, Alice. Suddenly, the ground beneath her churned, darkness closing in like a hungry maw. The murmur of her children's names brushed against her ears, teasing her to look back. But as she stood at the precipice of despair, she realized she had crossed a line she could never uncross. The weight of her choices pressed down, pulling her deeper into fear. With shadows encroaching and dread tightening like a noose, she had to choose, face the horror of the truth or become a part of the very darkness she feared. Who or what was waiting for her in the depths of the cornfield? With a sudden rustle, the corn parted, revealing a narrow path overtaken by shadows darker than night itself. Alice's breath hitched as something scraped the ground, a shuffling, unnatural movement that sent icy fingers of terror crawling up her spine. She hesitated, poised between reason and dread. Was it her imagination, or did that path beckon her? Her pulse quickened at the thought of her children sleeping soundly, unaware of the nightmare unfolding under the moon. A whisper threaded through the frigid air, ghostly and intimate. Help us! The words coiled around her heart, tightening until it felt like an echo of her deepest fears. Ignoring the warning signs, Alice took a shaky step forward, driven by that chilling call as much as her own desperation. The stalks pressed in around her, their dead husks brushing against her skin like fingers dragging her back. She felt the gaze of unseen things lurking just beyond her sight, eyes like lanterns pulling at her from the darkness. The rules whispered in her ear, a sinister chorus to remind her she was breaking every last one. Another rasp echoed through the unsettling stillness, and a flash of movement caught her eye, a figure, half concealed by the twisted stems. The absurd presence of the scarecrow loomed ahead, its features warped and darkened by shadows. Just as Mr. Grayson had warned, it wasn't what it seemed. A hollow gaze met hers, and dread surged in her chest like a tide threatening to drown her. Could it even be a scarecrow at all? As she watched, it shifted slightly, an unnatural creak that spoke of life within that stitched form. "Help us," it repeated in a voice that was both tender and chilling. Alice stepped back, heart racing. But there lingered an undeniable magnetism drawing her closer. The cornfields had consumed her sanity, and the grief tangled tighter than vines around her heart, a despair that whispered possibilities better left buried. What if her children were trapped within this darkness? She summoned a burst of courage, striking out again, passing the scarecrow to continue deeper into the field. Then, a thunderous clap of lightning illuminated a distant figure, hulking and monstrous between the rows, twisting and turning as if it was writhing in pain. Her breath turned shallow and quick. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, yet who would be there if she didn't move forward? "Mommy!" A familiar voice pierced through the veil of terror, raw and pleading, swallowing her whole. It came from deep within, echoing through the air as shadows spiraled around her. Alice broke into a run, heart hammering in rhythm with the thunderclap above. She called out, "Children!" The wind howled, as if mocking her, and still that voice cried out, weaving between the rows. Each step felt like a step deeper into some unspeakable fate. But what if she couldn't reach them in time? Panic surged as she rounded a corner, and the cornfield shifted, closing in as though it had teeth, hungry and waiting. Then, just as she thought the night could drop anew, the ground beneath her gave way like water, pulling her down into an abyss of darkness. As she tumbled, the last thought that flickered through her mind was a desperate hope: what if she could save them? But who would save her, as the shadows swallowed her whole? In that moment of freefall, the world became silent. What lay beyond the edges of her consciousness? What awaited her in the blackened depths? Alice hit the ground hard, the cool earth beneath her starkly contrasting with the stifling heat of the cornfield. Darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating. She scrambled to her feet, disoriented and gasping. The air was dense, heavy with a musty odor that clawed at her throat. "Mommy!" The voice called again, echoing from somewhere deeper in the darkness. Each syllable was coated in fear and desperation, threatening to wrench her heart from her chest. "Hold on. I'm coming!" she shouted, her voice swallowed by the eerie silence. Panic surged through her veins. She had to move, had to find her children. She stumbled forward, hands outstretched, fingers brushing against the unfamiliar ground. The sensation was slick and clammy, like something alive. Alice recoiled, wiping her hands on her jeans as a deep rumble vibrated beneath her. The ground trembled, and shadows began to shift, undulating as if drawn by some unseen force. "Help us!" The plea twisted in the air again, more urgent. It came from every direction, swirling around her, and snaring her thoughts. "Where are you?" she shouted, barely recognizing her own voice, which trembled with each word. The dark seemed to press in further, a suffocating wall of despair. She could feel the shadows wrapping around her ankles, pulling her as though it desired to drag her back down into the earth. With desperate resolve, she forced herself to move. Each step felt like wading through treacle, and the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of anguish wrapping around her mind. "Help us! Help us!" Suddenly, a pale light flickered in the distance. Hope ignited within her, a beacon piercing the veil of terror. She sprinted toward it, the path ahead twisting and turning as though alive, reshaping itself with every step she took. The light pulsed, brightening then dimming, a heartbeat in the darkness. As she drew closer, shapes emerged along the edges of her vision. Figures stood frozen between the rows of corn, long-limbed, twisted forms that seemed rooted in place, their eyes glimmering like wet stones. She skidded to a halt, a new wave of horror crashing over her. These were not her children. Their hollow eyes met hers, lifeless and cold. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices dripping with an otherworldly sorrow that chilled her bone deep. Alice took a step back, terror locking her knees in place. They didn't just look lost, they looked abandoned, eternally trapped in this nightmare. "Stay away from me," she screamed, turning on her heel, heart pounding as she retraced her steps. But the ground trembled again, and suddenly the light vanished, plunging her into absolute darkness once more. With every ounce of strength, she forged ahead, her breath ragged and loud against the oppressive silence. Each sound echoed, amplifying the horror that surrounded her, the hushed whispers, the unsettling rustles, the sharp intake of breath that felt too close. Just when she thought she would collapse, she stumbled onto a clearing. The moonlight pierced through a gap in the corn, illuminating a circle of soil marked with strange symbols. A chill draped over her, and for the first time, a memory pierced through the fog Mr. Grayson's warnings of boundaries. "No!" she gasped, realization crashing over her. She had broken the rules. She had come too deep. The shadows began to rise from the ground, swirling as they lost their grasp. She caught sight of movement in the darkness, her children, small figures weaving in and out of the looming horror. "Mommy, help!" they cried, but as she reached for them, a hand shot from beneath her, skimming over her ankle, tugging her back. Fear gripped her throat. "I'm coming!" she screamed, but the shadows clenched tighter around her, pulling her into their cold embrace. The last gnarled words hung in the air, wrapping around her brain. "You should have never come here." As they dragged her back into the depths, she fought against them, images of her children filling her mind. Would she be trapped here forever? What was hidden within the shadows that sought to claim her? But then, the whispers began again, this time clearer, more insistent. "Join us." The darkness intensified, pulling her mind into a whirlpool of despair, and just before she was swallowed whole, another voice cut through, familiar and piercing. "Mommy! Don't listen to them." Alice paused, hanging between hope and despair, gasping at the sliver of light that pierced through the shadows. Whose voice was it? The truth clawed at her, but she had no time to uncover it. All that remained was the question: in a place where shadows thrived, who could she trust anymore? The grip of the shadows slackened, just for a heartbeat. Alice seized the moment, lungs burning as she gasped for air. "Hold on!" she shouted, her heart racing with a desperate rhythm. "Stay with me." The echo of her children's cries was drowned by other, darker whispers, tugging at her will. "Join us." They lured her deeper into the abyss, each syllable slick against her skin like cold rain. A flicker caught her eye to the right. Agitated movement, the shapes braided into the darkness danced closer. She could barely make out the forms now, but the air around them shimmered with a sickly glow. They were the children, hers or others caught within this twisted realm. If she didn't move fast, their cries would morph into something more sinister, a cacophony of what could only be described as agony. "Mommy, help!" Their voices rose in pitch, each cry slicing through her thoughts like barbed wire. They reached out, hands outstretched, fingers trembling. "Don't!" Alice screamed, backing away, only to find the ground shifting again, like the very land was alive and intent on holding her captive. She whipped around, searching frantically for a way out. Then, she saw it, a narrow path emerging through the cornfield, lit by the remnants of that fleeting silver light. She dashed toward it, but the hands of shadows clawed at her legs, pulling her down, pulling her back. It felt as if the very earth was trying to swallow her whole. "No! No!" she cried out, yanking her feet free. Adrenaline ignited within her. She broke into a sprint, heart thunderous in her chest. The path narrowed, each step becoming a battle against unseen forces determined to drag her down. "Run, Mommy!" The voice beckoned again, urgent and raw. It was familiar, yet fraught with a desperation she couldn't ignore. Was this truly her child, or another curse in the guise of innocence? Clenching her fists, Alice sprinted toward the light, ignoring the bile of doubt rising in her throat. The pause was brief, exploding with movement around her as other figures emerged from the shadows, wretched, elongated creatures. Their mouths opened wide, a soundless scream frozen in horror. "Help us," they begged, words melding into a shrill song of despair. Every voice seemed to be someone she knew, twisted and churning, mixing nightmarishly with her children's cries. "Get away from me!" she yelled, fear feeding into a surge of power. But the shadows advanced, merging, swirling in a whirlwind of chaos. Each step Alice took toward the light only made the darkness fight harder, encasing her little bit by little bit. And then, something shifted in the air. The whispers morphed into laughter, deep, resonant with malice. "You cannot escape." The words curled around her with a sense of finality, freezing her in place. Alice's feet rooted as the figures surrounding her began to sway, weaving an ancient chant. "Join us." The haunting refrain surged, enveloping her mind. Her vision blurred, and for a terrifying moment, she felt the shadows reach into her thoughts, unearthing memories and twisting them, showing her everything she feared. Betrayal. Loss. Despair. "Mommy. Don't." The voice pierced through once more, stronger, clearer. It drove the darkness back momentarily, but Alice could feel herself unraveling, the shadows creeping back in, eager to reclaim their prey. No. Alice refused to be their lost soul. She forced herself to school her thoughts, seeking out the strength buried within. "I won't give in." As if in response, the figures shivered and recoiled. Hope bled into the fabric of the air, a pulse of resistance, enough to divert their attention briefly. Turning to the flickering light ahead, Alice stumbled forward, gathering every ounce of strength. But as she reached for the brightness, the ground beneath her cracked open, a gaping maw ready to swallow her whole again. "Don't look back." The voice called one last time, filled with a fierce kind of love, igniting a flicker in her heart. With a scream and the last drop of her resolve, Alice leaped into the light, hoping it would lead her to her children and away from this nightmare. But as she fell, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was only waiting, planning its next move. What awaited her on the other side? Was the light her salvation, or another trap set by the shadows? Alice landed hard, the ground beneath her shuddering like a living thing. Instead of the bright light she had hoped for, she was welcomed by a dim, sterile room, painted in agonizing shades of gray. The walls hummed with a low, unrelenting vibration that sent fear rippling through her core. She glanced around, panting, desperately scanning for any sign of her children. "Where am I?" The sound of her voice echoed unsettlingly, as if the walls absorbed her words, mocking her. She felt nauseated, the air thick and stale. The fading echoes of her children's cries, mingled with the whispers, still clung to her. "You cannot escape." The familiar voice was now teasing, taunting as if it ever just lurked in the corners of her mind. Alice stood up, the chill of the room seeping into her bones. Shadows blended with the dim light, shifting and curling around the edges. Faint whispers teased her ears again, like ribbons of smoke coiling in the air. "Mommy!" Her heart raced anew. In an instant, determination took hold of her. "Where are you?" she cried, the panic leaching into her voice. No response came, only the rhythmic vibration in the silence filling the room. As her eyes adjusted, she caught sight of something on the floor, an old, tattered piece of paper. She knelt down, feeling a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. The paper resembled a notice board, partially torn, containing a series of handwritten notes, each warning about the cursed nature of the land. 7 Rules for Survival, it read, and beneath the title, a list began. 1. Never ignore the whispers, they know your secrets. 2. The light is not always safe, feel its warmth first. 3. Offer a sacrifice or be claimed in darkness. 4. Trust no one, the familiar masks betray. 5. Do not stray from the path or the shadows will claim you. 6. Leave no traces of your presence, it will hunt you. 7. Always keep your children close, forever. A cold sweat broke on her forehead. Each rule felt like another chain linking her deeper into this nightmare. What does it mean? She whispered, clutching the paper. The shadows flickered violently around her, twisting with wrath as if they were alive, recounting the pain of those who had come before. Mommy! Help! The voice called again, fainter this time. Where are you? Alice yelled in agony, clutching the note to her chest. She took a step forward, but the ground shifted again beneath her feet, pulsating with a life of its own. Anticipation clawed at her gut, a warning. Then, in the far corner of the room, she saw it, a dark figure kneeling, small and frail, a familiar silhouette. A child. Her heart plummeted into her stomach. Is that? She raced forward, heart pounding, breath caught in her throat. As she reached out, the shadow distorted, elongating into an immeasurable grotesque shape. A chilling laugh echoed through the air as the figure morphed, the darkness spilling and swirling as if it was mocking her. Mommy, the voice was mocking now, a cruel imitation of her child. Alice stumbled back, fear snaking around her heart, squeezing tighter with every second. She felt the ground behind her pull her, demanding submission to the creeping darkness. No! You won't take me! She cried, but she felt the shadow suffocating her resolve. She needed to escape, she needed to remember the rules. But each sentence on that ragged paper burned on her skin, igniting the terror locked within. What if breaking a rule cost her everything? What if she did not have a choice? What's wrong, Mommy? The figure loomed closer now, a puppet of the darkness that twisted in the space between them. You know the rules. Alice's breath quickened as a dreadful realization crept into her mind. It wasn't just her children who were in peril. She was ensnared too, woven into a curse that could consume them all. Stay back! She shouted, but as the shadows closed in, the light flickered, revealing another dark pathway leading deep into the void. What decision lay ahead? Would she dare to venture forth and break the unbreakable, or would she give in to despair? The path to her children or her doom awaited. And as she turned to face the growing shadows, a chilling thought crept in. What if the rules were already pulling the strings? The shadows twisted around Alice, their inky tendrils flickering like flames in a windless night, and the mockery of the figure hung heavy in the air. The hallway grew darker, merging with the pulsating shadows, a void hungry for her fear. With shaking hands, she gripped the tattered paper, reminding herself of the rules. The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. Almost instinctively, she stood straight. I will not fall into your trap, she muttered, heart pounding in time with her fury. But even as she declared her defiance, a smirk stretched across the shadow's face, its eyes sparkling with darkness. You think you can escape? It knows your fears. Alice turned, heart racing, seeking an exit. The dim light cast flickering reflections, revealing glimpses of twisted shapes lurking in the corners of her vision. She could almost feel the weight of their stares, heavy and suffocating. Panic surged in her veins. She stumbled backwards, barely restraining a scream as the soft whispers grew louder. They slithered into her mind, each word echoing a memory long buried. Secrets, regrets, the very failures that made her a prisoner of her choices. Do you hear them? They want you to join them. The shadow laughed, its sharp teeth glistening in the feeble light. No! Alice shouted, desperation clawing at her insides. I'll find my children. She knew she had to focus, to keep her thoughts straight. The whispers were trying to unravel her. Remember the rules. Suddenly, a flicker of light illuminated the far end of the corridor. The darkness recoiled as if stung. It called to her, a beacon of hope or a trap cloaked in false safety. Heart in her throat, Alice sprinted toward the light. Each step echoed like thunder, reverberating through the shadows that howled in protest. She felt the walls close in, their clammy fingers reaching for her, but she pushed onward. In that fleeting moment, the whispers quieted, and she dared to hope. "I just need to reach the light," she murmured to herself, spurred on by memories of her children's laughter, their soft hands in her own. "I'll do whatever it takes to save them." As she neared the glow, the edges of her vision danced with shadowy figures creeping closer. They wavered and writhed, a chorus of despair threatening to drown her. Alice broke through the threshold into what appeared to be a well-lit room, blinding in comparison. Breathless, she stumbled inside, scarcely believing her luck. The room was filled with an odd assortment of objects, faded photographs, strange symbols, old toys. Something about it felt wrong, heavy with secrets waiting to be unearthed. "Mommy." That voice again. This time, it carried urgency that made her stomach twist. "Where are you?" she shouted, the desperation rising in her chest once more. The shadows at the door pulsed, reluctant to enter the light, but they swirled in fury at her intrusion. It was then she noticed hanging from the ceiling were 7 objects, each a twisted, warped representation of the rules. "Sacrifice or be claimed," she whispered, trembling. "What kind of sacrifice? And who would have to pay it?" The shadow reappeared behind her, now fully formed and monstrous, with a sinister smile. "Choose wisely, Alice. Remember, only one shall be saved." Panic coursed through her. There was no time left. Her children, her promise to protect them. She had to make a choice. In that moment of chaotic realization, lifeless faces flashed at her, trapped in the darkness she had not yet seen. Would she sacrifice her own freedom for the chance to save her children? And as her breath hitched, she knew one thing for certain: there was no easy way out. With the shadows closing in once again, Alice felt the weight of her decision looming large. If she chose wrong, would she become just another whisper in the dark? She glanced back at the objects. Doomed choices hung before her like a noose above it all. The shadows loomed, waiting. What would Alice uncover next about the curse binding them all? Would she dare to confront the horror ahead, or let it pull her into eternal night? The room, though bright, felt suffocating. Alice's heart thundered in her chest as she faced the 7 objects suspended above her, grotesque representations of choices she never asked to make. Each hung like a grim reminder of her impending doom. The shadow whispered again, taunting her. "Time is running out. The darkness grows hungry. Can you feel it?" With a surge of defiance, she turned to face the shadow. "I won't let you win. My children need me." But the shadow merely chuckled, its voice resonating through the thick air. "Ah, but what do you truly know of sacrifice? Those you love could be lost forever if you don't choose wisely." Alice's mind raced, darting back to the faces of her children, their laughter, their innocence. She couldn't let thoughts of them be twisted in this malevolent game. Swallowing the pain rising in her throat, she focused on the items above. The first object, a dusty teddy bear, looked torn and battered. Memories of bedtime stories flooded her mind, wrapping her with warmth. But was it a false comfort? Beneath it, shadows writhed, hungry for despair. Next swayed a cracked mirror, its reflective surface murky. Alice shuddered at the notion of confronting her own flaws, the mess of her life. Which part of her would she sacrifice? Then a rusted key hung beside it, its jagged teeth glimmering ominously. A key to what? A door best left unopened? She wanted no part of whatever lay beyond. Hand trembling, she shifted her focus to a child's shoe, its tiny size mocking her maternal instincts. Guilt knotted in her gut. Would sacrificing that part of her be the key to their escape? Anguish coursed through her veins, and she gasped as memories flooded back, moments stolen away by regret. The next element was a frayed drawing, a crumpled masterpiece from her daughter. "Mommy, I love you." It screamed in silence. How could she bear to part with it? The shadows danced closer, drawn to her rising fear. A drip of sweat trickled down her neck as she scrutinized the final two, an hourglass nearly empty and a sinister-looking book, its spine cracked and pages yellowed. The Book of Shadows, the figure hissed, showing sharp teeth. It holds the answers to your destruction. Desperation gripped her. What did she truly value? Time? Memories? The very essence of her children's safety? What price was she willing to pay? Choose. The figure commanded, voice rising in intensity, echoing throughout the room. Only one may survive, and one shall take their place. Which life will it be? Yours or theirs? Alice closed her eyes. The chaos surged, drowning her in anxiety, but within that turmoil, she heard them again. Their laughter echoed. Clenching her fists, she forced herself to remember. The rules bent to her will if she confronted the truth hidden deep within. Maybe, just maybe, she could maneuver within this nightmare. But what if she could save them all? Suddenly, the whispering shadows began to swirl violently, filling the room with an oppressive weight. Time felt stretched, each second an eternity. Alice opened her eyes, terror flashing through her. I choose, she started, but the words were swallowed beneath the echoes of despair. In that moment, motion blurred ahead, the items trembled, shadows rushing closer. As she made her decision, the room shattered. Would Alice decipher the perilous truth in time? Or would she become yet another victim, lost forever to the darkness? The air crackled as the room splintered into shadows. Screams echoed in her ears, voices that twisted into nightmarish cries mingling with her own. Alice felt weightless, suspended in a flickering void where the light fought against the darkness. Images flashed, her children's faces blurred as fear consumed her. Then, she fell. Not onto the ground, but through a murky portal, and suddenly, she lay sprawled on rough wooden planks, gasping. The scent of damp earth hit her, and a chill crawled over her skin. Heart racing, she pushed herself up and tried to gather her bearings. This wasn't the room she had just been trapped in. It was a rickety barn, its draping shadows offering no comfort. Dim light spilled through cracks in the walls, revealing scattered hay and an old tractor that looked as though it hadn't seen use in years. As Alice staggered to her feet, a familiar whisper slithered through the air, colder and more menacing than before. You thought you could escape? Choose again, or suffer the consequences. She turned, eyes wide, searching every corner for the source. The shadows leered back, swirling with an anticipation that sent icy fingers up her spine. Where are my children? She screamed into the oppressive gloom. The only answer was a mocking silence, punctuated by the scuttle of unseen creatures lurking just beyond her vision. Panic gnawed at her as memories surged forth, the items she had seen before, each a symbol of her past choices, flashed in her mind, and she felt the weight of their significance pressing heavily upon her. What was a choice worth in this hell's cape? Before she could fully grasp her thoughts, a harsh, clanging bell echoed throughout the barn, jolting her attention. Alice's gaze snapped to a raised platform at the far end. There, an assortment of familiar objects lay scattered, each was a remnant of her earlier choice. Toothbrushes, a tiny jacket, a photo of her family, all displayed like trophies of loss. The moment she set foot closer, shadows slithered along her legs, whispering secrets meant to keep her rooted to this place. But something else pulled at her, an eerie glow emanated from beneath an old wooden beam. Heart pounding, she knelt down and pried it apart, revealing a dirt-covered box locked tight. Clutching the rusted edges, she thought fleetingly of the key she had seen floating above her not long ago. Her mind raced. As she fought against the waves of doubt washing over her, the chilling whispers returned, the lock holds your salvation, but the key is a curse. What will you sacrifice to unlock the truth? Stop! She shouted into the darkness, frustration surging through her. What do you want from me? Can you face what you've buried? It hissed, reverberating off the wooden walls, taunting her. To rescue your children? Or will you allow the shadows to take you? With every ounce of determination, Alice stood. She braced her palms against the box, feeling its cold surface pulse against her fingers. "I'll do what it takes," she vowed. "I'll fight for them." Just as she turned, the temperature plummeted, and a figure materialized in front of her, a monstrous silhouette with hollow eyes that glimmered like pitch black. It loomed closer, hungry for her despair. "Choose," the shadowed figure growled, each syllable a dark promise. "The lock or the shadows? You cannot have both, and time remains short." Alice's breath hitched. She faced the impossible choice that could seal not just her fate, but that of her children. The barn felt like a coffin, and the weight pressing down was like lead. In that moment of dread, she realized something: her resolve needed more than sheer will. The clock was ticking, and the shadows were ever so eager to take what they wanted. Her heart raced as she inched closer to the figure. "I will make my choice," she declared, fighting through the pulse of fear as she stared deep into the dark void of the shadow. What awaited her, freedom or the end? Would she face the truths hidden in the box, or would the darkness consume her whole? Just then, a distant, haunting laughter echoed through the barn. What lay locked inside that box, and would it truly lead her to salvation? The laughter faded into an eerie silence, replaced only by the sound of Alice's heartbeat thumping in her ears. She felt the air grow thick around her, almost suffocating. The figure loomed larger, swallowing the light, and its hollow eyes pierced through her like daggers. "Choose," it whispered again, accentuating the word, dragging it out like a death sentence. Each syllable echoed off the walls, filling the barn with dread. She could feel shadows creeping closer, wrapping around her like snakes, tightening their grip. Alice's mind raced. The box. What if the truth was inside? What if it was the key to her children's freedom? Or perhaps every hope was a trap, designed to lure her closer to the darkness? She was caught in a web of choice, the kind that could thread her life or unravel it. "Unlock it," a phantom voice drifted around her. "But be warned, knowledge can be a double-edged sword." Lifting her trembling hands, she felt the box's rough surface. Her pulse quickened. Did she dare? With a deep breath, Alice reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against the invisible key she had conjured in her mind. It was there, tantalizingly close yet forever out of reach. Memories surged, each one a gnarled reminder of what she had thrown away to protect them. She remembered birthday parties, bedtime stories, the warmth of hugs, all tinged with fear that they were slipping away forever. The darkness laughed, it thrived on her pain and uncertainty. "I'll save them," she gasped, summoning the rage that boiled within. "I want to let you take me." She pounded her fist against the box, shaking the dirt that clung to it, sending a shiver through the shadows. The figure recoiled, its eyes narrowing. "You think power lies only in the lock? Sacrifice for knowledge, Alice. What will you give?" A harsh wind whipped through the barn, sending hay swirling like a storm. Alice's heart raced as realization crashed over her like icy water. They wouldn't let her see the truth without a price. "What do you want?" she shouted. "Just tell me. Your deepest fear," it rasped. "What kept you from being whole? What haunts your dreams?" Tears pricked her eyes. She couldn't face it. She couldn't face the weight of the guilt that shadowed her every thought. "No. I can't, I want to." But the shadows tightened, coaxing her, whispering her fears back to her. They spoke of her past choices, the moments she could never take back, the night she chose work over family, the day she let arguments poison her home. How could she allow this darkness to feed on her? "I was trying to protect them," Alice cried, voice trembling, heart pounding against her ribs. "They don't deserve this. Please." With one desperate movement, she reached for the box's lock, her fingers trembling. Could her failures be the key? Would admitting her flaws open the door to freedom? The shadows tensed, eagerly awaiting her every action. "Choose your worth," the figure hissed. Unravel the truth, or surrender to nothingness. As she hovered over the lock, Alice's hands shook. The laugh echoed again, and for a moment, she saw flashes of her children. Their laughter cut through the darkness like a lighthouse through fog. "No!" she screamed, wrenching her hands away, hands pressed against her temples. "I won't give in." The barn quaked, and the shadows screamed, shrieking in chorus. But just as Alice thought she would succumb to the madness, she felt a shift in the air. Suddenly, the ground beneath her began to tremble, and the barn seemed to shudder with awakened fury. Alice looked up, startled, as light spilled through the cracks in the walls, and the shadows recoiled, shrieking in rage. "You can't escape!" the figure roared, as tendrils of darkness whipped toward her, trying to drag her back down. In that blinding moment of light, she felt a surge of strength. "Get away from me!" she yelled again, determined now more than ever. This was her moment, a moment to choose not just for herself but for her children too. As she charged toward the box, ready to unleash whatever lay hidden within, she only wondered if it was salvation or damnation that awaited her. Then, without warning, a soft, high-pitched voice echoed from the shadows, "Mommy, help us!" Alice froze. Her children's voices rang clear, mingling pain with hope. Could she truly save them? Or was it too late? The light pulsated around Alice, illuminating the twisted shadows that had held her captive for so long. She felt the weight of every choice pressing down on her, relentless and suffocating. But at that moment, despair met hope with a fierce clash. She thought of her children, their laughter, their hugs, their dreams. The memories surged, filling her with a determination she hadn't felt in what seemed like ages. "No!" she roared, the word carrying the weight of her love for them. "You won't take them." Taking a step toward the box, she felt her heart racing, each thud reverberated like a war drum urging her to fight against the darkness. The shadows hissed and writhed as they came alive, angry and restless. The shadow figure loomed, but its presence only fueled her resolve. "Alice," it rasped, its voice chilling. "You will regret your choice." "Regret?" She laughed bitterly, pushing against the terror that wrapped around her. "Regret is not letting fear rule my life." With newfound courage, she knelt before the box, hands shaking. "Every fear I've buried near cost me everything. And you know what? I'm ready to face them. Because this isn't just for me." The shadows recoiled, their whispers losing strength as she pressed on. "This is for my children. I'll face my past because I won't let it haunt us anymore." Her declaration shattered the stillness like a crack of thunder, and the shadow figure shifted, its form faltering for just an instant. With a deep breath, she grabbed hold of the rusty lock. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears as she felt the memories surge, the countless moments of fear and loss, the regret of missed opportunities, and the knowledge that she'd never allow the darkness to take anyone else again. "I choose to be free," she shouted, turning the lock. The box creaked open, and an otherworldly light spilled out, bathing her in warmth. The shadows screamed and recoiled, their ear-splitting cries echoing through the barn as she leaned closer to the light. Within it lay the truth, the faces of her children, the memories of her love, memories of laughter, and unshakable bonds that refused to be severed. "Mommy!" they cried again, the shadows of doubt retreating as their love cut through the darkness like a beacon. "Help us!" In that moment, everything snapped into clarity. The sacrifice didn't demand her despair, it required her hope and love. With tears streaming, Alice raised her hands, heart open and vulnerable. "I choose my children." The light bursted forth, engulfing her. The shadows convulsed, losing their hold as the laughter of her children filled the air, blending with the roar of the light. And then, with a brilliant flash, the barn shattered away, dissolving into particles that sent tendrils of darkness scattering. Alice found herself in a sun-drenched field, the corn swaying peacefully, and for the first time, the air felt pure and alive. Heart racing, she turned, and there they were, her children, their faces glowing like sunlight. "Mommy!" They squealed, rushing into her arms, light and warmth embracing her. "Thank God," she breathed, holding them close. "I thought I lost you." The weight of the curse lifted as she felt love coursing through her veins. The darkness dissipated, evaporating like mist under the sun. She could finally breathe deeply, her heart filled with gratitude. "Promise you'll always stay close," she whispered, brushing her hand through their hair, eyes twinkling with tears. They nodded, and together, they walked back to the remnants of the farmhouse, no longer haunted, but a new place to rebuild their lives, free from shadows and pain. As Alice looked back one last time at the cornfield that had terrorized her soul, she knew the rules no longer bound her. She had faced her fears, chosen love instead of despair, and that was all that mattered. They would face each day together, stronger than the darkness that once threatened to consume them. But even as she walked away, a small chill danced across her skin. The memories of the shadows echoed faintly in the corners of her mind. A reminder of what was and what could have been, always urging her to cherish every moment she had. So as you read this, take Alice's story to heart. Don't let fear bind you. Love fiercely, tread carefully, and never doubt your power over the shadows that linger. Now, if you want more stories that grip your heart and shake your core, you need to subscribe immediately. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm. And please, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what you just witnessed. Share this journey with at least 5 friends who must see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel by acting now.